friendly thank you. Friendly Westwood Village Rotary Club. And I just want to remind everybody to please put yourself on mute unless you're actually speaking. And there we go. Why aren't we moving? We've been here for 92 years now, since April 20, today's April 28th, 2022. We're 92 years old. And right off the bat, what I'd like to do is say, Carol Rosenstein is on the cover of Rotary magazine there. Look at that. That is like, I don't know if she's the first person we've ever had in our club that's been on the cover of the Rotary magazine. But there she is. I hope you've all seen it, either gotten it in the mail or gotten it online or however you do it. But Carol, this is like so exciting. And I'm sure Music Men's Minds is excited about it too. And we are all very excited. But moving right along, I'd like to get started with our dear Dr. Jim Meyer, who joined the club June 1st, 2014, and his sponsor was Dwight Heckler. And Jim, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please
Jim,
unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute yourself. Jim, unmute yourself. Okay, well, I guess he's having a little trouble. So let's.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We can, Jim.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To
the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Marsha, you need to unmute.
Okay. And moving right along, thank you, Jim. And our thought for the day is by past President Ron Leister, who joined the club March 20th of 1986. So that's been a while. And he was sponsored by Bruce Harris and Jim Greathead. I've never had the fortune of meeting them. I'm sure they're great people.
Sure.
And Ron, would you like to take the floor, please?
Sure, I'll give you a little history lesson. Back on April 28th in 1770, the British Captain James Cook aboard the Endeavour landed at Botany Bay in Australia. And 19 years thereafter, in 1789, Fletcher Christian led a mutiny on the HMS Bounty against his captain William Bligh in the South Pacific. Eventually, Fletcher Christian made off with the Bounty, 7 English seamen, 6 male Tahitians, 11 female Tahitians, and 1 infant. And they settled on Pitcairn Island, where the Bounty was sunk, and his descendants still live. So that's very interesting. In 1937, Pan American Airways had a flying boat called the China Clipper, and it completed the world's first commercial trans-Pacific flight from San Francisco to Hong Kong. So a lot of traveling going on in the past, and as we all know, the travel industry has been hit pretty hard by the COVID pandemic, but it's expecting a resurgence this summer. I hear that our incoming president, Chris Gaynor, was about to go to Russia, but changed his plans. A very wise move, going to Italy instead. Good choice. I'd like to offer for the travelers in the crew here a familiar Irish prayer for all those who might be traveling. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ron. And we have our song coming up. And I just wanted to remind you about Music Men's Minds and Carol on the cover. I'm just so thrilled about that. I can't talk about it enough. I've been telling everybody I know. This is a member of my Rotary Club. Yeah. And so now, Ed Gall, do you want to take yourself off of mute, please? Whoops, hold on. There we are. Ed Gall.
I didn't realize I was that handsome.
Yeah.
Okay, even though the Major League Baseball has been in progress for a couple of weeks, I intended to sing this last week, but I'm going to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game, which everybody knows. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Just buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, how about Nancy McCready? Would you like to give the 4-way test for us all?
Sure, certainly. The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Nancy. And next we have some guests and visiting Rotarians and Rotaractors. I'd like to introduce our first guest, and we're so honored to have Makiko here today. She is our future district governor. She's right now working in new club development and for District 5280. She will be our district governor in 2023-24. And we are also excited to have her here. Thank you for coming, Makiko. She's waving.
Thank you so very much. So excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad. And do we have any Rotaractors here today? Rotaractors, take yourself off mute. I can't see everybody with my screen up like this, so you guys are going to have to take it off. And how about, do we have any visiting Rotarians or other guests? You want to speak up? All right. Well, moving right along then. As we all know, Rotary is very active in Ukraine right now. And there's 3 ways you can donate if you wish. And one of them is, of course, Peter Moore knows about this, the Rotarian, the Fellowship of the Flying Rotarians, and you can donate through them. Rotary.org, the main site, and our own District 5280. And also, I think it's thanks to Ron, if you go to our website, wvrc.net, you'll see all 3 of those listed there. And all you have to do is just click on the name and it'll take you directly to that site if you wanted to do anything for, Ukraine at all. And I just want to remind everyone that on, what is it, May 19th? Is that correct, Diane? May 19th? Or is it the next one?
No, May 19th.
May 19th. May 19th, we'll be meeting at Collins Katz YMCA in person. So next week will be in person at the Luskin Center. That's correct. So May 19th will be in person on Westgate, right by University High School there. So I just wanted to get that up. And also, there's an opportunity if you wanted to get there early to. Diane, would you like to talk about that? The volunteer opportunity there.
Sure. So every week on Thursday, the YMCA hands out boxes of food to those in need, children and families. And it starts around 9:30 and goes to about 11. And Erin is always looking for volunteers to help hand out the boxes. So if you want to come early on the 15th and help hand out, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. And are there any other announcements to be made? Take yourself off mute, please, if you have an announcement. Anyone?
May I?
Yes.
So for President-elect Chris Gaynor and his leadership team and everyone, please join us at the Proud Bird on Sunday, May 22nd for the district assembly, which I'm chairing. So I would love to see all of you there. This is the annual biggest training for the incoming Rotarian leadership team members, as well as any Rotarian or anybody who is interested in learning more about Rotary. So please come, please register.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any announcements to make? Okay. And again, look at this, the music for the ages, our beloved Carol Rosenstein there. It's such a wonderful thing. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. John O'Keefe, who will introduce our guest speaker today. John, take it from here. Mhm.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be introducing Cori Garfias today, who will be talking and giving us a PowerPoint presentation of both of the Gettys, the jewel up on the hill right above us here and the villa in Malibu. Cori's been working at the Getty now for about 8.5 years. She's currently in the position of head of group sales and tourism. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in music industry studies from Cal State Northridge, and is currently working on her master's in library and information science through an online program at San Jose State University. Cori enjoys cooking, attending concerts, creating eclectic Spotify playlists, watching the Dodgers live and on TV, good for her, and enjoying downtime with her husband and, get this, their dog Huckleberry. So Cori, we're delighted to have you here today, and please let us see your presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much for that introduction, John. And Marcia, thank you for the lovely start to this meeting. I'm delighted to be here with all of you today. I'm going to go ahead and not share my screen myself just to save some bandwidth. We don't have the best Wi-Fi internet out here, but I will start my video at the conclusion of my presentation. So you'll get to see me and Huckleberry there. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with all of you today. As John mentioned, my name is Cori Garfias, and I'll be sharing some information with you about the Getty, J. Paul Getty himself, and all of our programs. I work in group sales and tourism under the umbrella of security and visitor services. It is my understanding that I will move through the entire presentation before taking any questions. All right, so who was J. Paul Getty? J. Paul Getty was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1892. He studied at 3 different universities, first at USC, then Berkeley, and then he finally ended up graduating from Oxford. He double majored in political science and economics. After he completed his studies there, he headed back to the States to begin working with his father in the oil fields. His father was originally an attorney, but ended up getting into the oil industry at the prime time to get into oil. His father purchased oil fields in the state of Oklahoma. J. Paul Getty made his first million when he was only 23 years old in 1916. Mr. Getty had 5 wives, not all at the same time, and he had 5 sons. He had no daughters. He learned how to speak Arabic, which greatly contributed to his success in his dealings in the Middle East. Mr. Getty ended up developing an intense love and passion for the arts. He started to collect at a rapid pace. In 1945, he purchased the villa property located in the Pacific Palisades area in Santa Monica Mountains, off of the Pacific Coast Highway. In 1954, he opened up a home gallery at the Getty Villa property. The home gallery was only open a few days a week, and those who wanted to visit had to book pretty far in advance to ensure a spot to see his private collection. In 1968, fascinated with the ancient world of the Mediterranean, Mr. Getty began his plans to build a Roman-style villa at the Pacific Palisades site to serve as a museum. Construction officially began in 1970, and the museum opened up in 1974. The Getty Villa and the Villa dei Papiri. The J. Paul Getty Museum was modeled after the Villa dei Papiri, the largest and most luxuriously furnished seaside villa that had been found during the early excavations at Herculaneum in Italy in the 1700s. A large cache of carbonized papyrus book rolls found on the premises point to Lucius Calpurnius Piso Siconius, the wealthy father-in-law of Julius Caesar, as a possible owner of the home. The ancient home remained completely covered by volcanic debris until the 20th century, but exploratory tunnels dug up in the 18th century by a Swiss engineer allowed the villa to be mapped. These ground plans became the basis of the museum's design. Fascinated by the classical world, Mr. Getty envisioned that such a Roman-inspired villa would provide an appropriate setting for his art collection. Even though these holdings included works from many historical time periods and places, Greek and Roman antiquities were an important element, as they were one of Mr. Getty's favorite. He liked the idea that the villa would be based on an ancient residence. He wanted visitors to feel as if they had been invited into an intimate setting to view and enjoy art. Mr. Getty's passing and his enduring legacy. Mr. Getty passed away in 1976 at the age of 83 in England, where he had lived for 25 years. He never saw the museum that bore his name, although he oversaw its construction closely. His will, which calls for, and I quote, the diffusion of artistic and general knowledge, led to the creation of the J. Paul Getty Trust, one of the largest supporters of the visual arts in the world. He left about $660 million to the trust, which was a big surprise to them. They did not know that they were going to get that money. They were pleasantly surprised. This money has been reinvested in the stock market, and depending upon where the market is at, we can be valued at anywhere between $6 billion and now, post-pandemic, $9 billion, which makes us the wealthiest private art institution in the world. Both sites are free for everyone always. The only thing that we charge people for is for parking. The development and establishment of the Getty Center. Since the endowment grew over the years and more art was collected after Mr. Getty's passing, we needed another place to showcase this beautiful collection. A lot of it was hidden in storage. We purchased the land where the Getty Center is located in 1989 for $25 million, which, if you know LA real estate, that's a pretty good deal. The Getty Center is located in the Santa Monica Mountains. Richard Meyer was selected to be the architect in 1984. However, construction did not begin until 1989. It was a pretty long and drawn out process to work with the neighborhood folks in Brentwood and Bel Air to try and get all the permits. A lot of them are not too keen on the idea of a big museum going up in their backyard. So alas, we began construction in 1989. So when the center opened up in 1997, the villa site closed down for renovations. And did you know that the Getty is the most popular cultural tourist attraction in Los Angeles? So when visitors want a cultural experience, whether they're domestic tourists or international tourists, we are the place that they go. Pre-pandemic numbers were, and annually between the two sites, we would welcome between 1.8 million and 2 million visitors annually, about 3/4 of that being at the center and then the other quarter being at the Getty Villa. So the center houses our collection ranging from Middle Ages through the early 1900s, and the Getty Villa houses our Greek, Roman, and Etruscan antiquities collection. Many folks don't realize just how truly vast the Getty is. There are over 1,200 employees that work for the Getty, on site at the center, on site at the villa, at the annex in Valencia, which is this big storage facility, and all over the world. At the top of the umbrella, we have the trust. After that, we have the museum, which is what most people think of when they think of the Getty. Then we have the Getty Research Institute, located on site at the Getty Center. The Getty Research Institute is the largest art and architecture libraries in the world. Then we have the Getty Conservation Institute. The Conservation Institute has offices, labs, and scientists on site, but they are most well known for the work that they do overseas preserving cultural heritage. Lastly, we have the Getty Foundation. The Getty Foundation fulfills the philanthropic mission of the Getty Trust by supporting individuals and institutions committed to advancing the greater understanding and preservation of the visual arts in Los Angeles and throughout the world. The Getty Research Institute is located at the Getty Center and is dedicated to furthering knowledge and advancing understanding of the visual arts. The Getty Research Institute maintains a research library, organizes exhibitions and other events, sponsors residential scholars programs, publishes books, and produces electronic databases. The GRI was first discussed in 1983 and was located in Santa Monica. The GRI's research library contains over 1 million volumes of books, periodicals, and auction catalogs. We also have special collections and 2 million photographs of art and architecture. The library does not circulate its collections, but does extend library
The mechanics of the deterioration are that beset a variety of material unique in the world, and that's because our trustees, I think, recognize the importance of the contributions we can make to advancing conservation practice, but also ultimately, and as importantly, protecting and preserving the world's cultural heritage. There are very few organizations, in the United States at least, who invest as much in conservation research, conservation practice, caring for their collections, but also making sure that the field of conservation writ large and at an international level is a vibrant, vital one. And I'm so proud of that. It's something that the Getty has really embraced in its short 30-year history, and it's extraordinary.
All right, moving right along here. Here are a couple of projects that the GCI has worked on. On the left, you'll see wall paintings conservation at Magao Grottos. The Wall Painting Conservation Project at the Magao Grottos is a partnership of the GCI with China's State Administration of Cultural Heritage, undertaken in collaboration with the Dunhuang Academy, aimed to identify and understand through investigation and research the causes and mechanisms of deterioration of the wall paintings in Cave 85 in order to design strategies and implement conservation actions, including both treatment and preventative conservation measures that are adaptable to other cave temples at Magao, as well as other Silk Road sites. On the bottom right, you'll see conservation and management of the tomb of Tutankhamun. The GCI embarked on a 5-year collaboration with Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities on a project for the conservation and management of the tomb of Tutankhamun. The project followed a values-based conservation methodology where the archaeological, historic, artistic values, and significance of the tomb guide future conservation and management decisions. The Getty Foundation fulfills the philanthropic mission of the Getty Trust by supporting individuals and institutions committed to advancing the greater understanding and preservation of the visual arts in Los Angeles and throughout the world. Through strategic grant initiatives, it strengthens art history as a global discipline, promotes the interdisciplinary practice of conservation, increases access to museum and archival collection, and develops current and future leaders in the visual arts. It carries out its work in collaboration with other Getty programs to ensure that they individually and collectively achieve maximum effect. The Getty Foundation, initially called the Getty Grant Program, was established in 1984 in the belief that philanthropy is a key ingredient in carrying out the mission of the J. Paul Getty Trust. Drawing on their unique position as a grant-making entity within the larger Getty Trust, the foundation utilizes the expertise of all the Getty programs to identify areas where grants can really make a difference. Here's a video featuring Getty Museum Director Tim Potts, in which he talks about the Getty Center and the Getty Villa.
The J. Paul Getty Museum is one of the great art museums of the world. And that's quite miraculous when you consider that it has all come about essentially in the last 50 years. The focus of the Getty's collecting has always been on few works, but at the very highest quality. It's aimed to be a collection of masterpieces. And that, I think, was what makes it stand out so much from other bigger and deeper collections. But the quality of what you see at the Getty is absolutely first rate. Education is absolutely at the center of all that we do as a museum. In the process we go through in collecting, in displaying it and explaining it to our audiences, but also the research that then flows from that by our curators and by visiting scholars, and all of the educational programs that we provide around them. So we are, in that sense, not just a museum, but we're a laboratory for art and indeed a university of the visual arts. Over the last 40 years or so, I think the Getty Museum has done an extraordinary job of building a collection of European art from ancient times to the beginnings of the 20th century. In the next 40 years, I think it will be more important to put this tradition or these traditions in a more global and intercultural context, because there's always connections and influences and interactions between cultures. None of them evolves or emerges entirely in a vacuum. And it'll be important, I think, in the increasingly global world we live in to understand also the development of art history in truly global terms. As well as providing an experience of beautiful works of art, I think a visit to a museum like the J. Paul Getty Museum opens your eyes to other ways of seeing the world, to other cultures, other ways of understanding our place in the world. And that, I think, is extremely important for all of us.
All right. The gardens and the outdoor spaces of the Getty Center. The Central Garden is an evolving work of art designed to change with the seasons. And I will say right now, it is particularly beautiful since spring has sprung. So if you can make your way on up to the Getty Center and walk through the Central Garden, it is extra spectacular right now. It was created by California artist Robert Irwin. The 134,000 square foot Central Garden lies at the heart of the Getty Center. More than 500 varieties of plant material are used in the landscaping. All of the foliage and materials of the garden are selected to accentuate the interplay of light, color, and reflection. Since the center opened in 1997, the Central Garden has evolved as its plants have grown and been trimmed. New plants are constantly being added to the palette. Robert Irwin's statement, and I quote, "always changing, never twice the same," end quote, is carved into a stepping stone in the Central Garden, a reminder of the ever-changing nature of this living work of art. The Cactus Garden, see a variety of cacti, succulents, and other plants from a desert terrain, as well as panoramic views of Los Angeles in this garden located in between the museum's east and west pavilions. Gardens and outdoor spaces of the Getty Villa. We have the outer peristyle garden. In ancient Roman times, the outer peristyle garden would have been used to converse with guests and for solo contemplation, depicting famous philosophers, political figures, deities, athletes, and animals. The statues stand in the locations approximate to where they stood at the Villa dei Papiri. The herb garden. The most functional garden of an ancient Roman house was the herb garden. In antiquity, these kitchen gardens provided vegetables and seasonings for cooking. The inner peristyle garden. This garden is designed as a square-shaped walkway lined with columns and featuring decorative marble floors, walls, and ceilings. The space would have been used for strolling and conversation. And lastly, the East Garden. Beyond the east stairway of the Villa Museum building is the East Garden. This tranquil space is shaded by sycamore and laurel trees. And that is all I have for you. Let me go ahead and enable my video again so you can see my face. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I can also talk about the current exhibitions at both sites, whatever Marcia and John, however you'd like to proceed from here.
So you're muted.
Yeah. I had a question.
Sure.
The exhibitions, now I know you have them often. What do you focus on in your exhibitions? What kind of art or what kind of exhibitions do you focus on?
Sure. So let me close my PowerPoint presentation, and I have some tabs ready to go on our current exhibitions here. So at the Getty Villa, we just opened a new exhibition. And can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we just had this exhibition open at the Getty Villa. It's called Ancient Iran and the Classical World. It is quite spectacular. There is a immersive 5-minute immersive film experience that visitors can partake in. It is lovely. Actually, let me show you. This is kind of a little sneak peek of the website here. This is kind of what you'll see when you go. This is, so it's made to feel as though you're walking around in this ancient palace. And you can interact with this website too, but this gives you an idea of what the immersive film is like. So to answer your question, John, typically exhibitions at the Getty Villa pertain to the ancient world. So ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Iran, ancient Persia. We had the Cyrus cylinder there a few years ago. So that's that. And then at the Getty Center, our collection, like I said, ranges from medieval through Impressionism, early 1900s. Our exhibitions fall within that criteria. Sometimes things fall outside of that realm. Mr. Getty didn't really care, I guess you could say, care for modern or contemporary art. It wasn't really his favorite thing to collect. So we try and follow through with his legacy and collect what he likes to collect. Some exceptions to that, though, is we do have a photographs collection now in a photographs department, and we actually just opened the Cunningham a retrospective exhibition. So this is on view now at the Getty Center. So it's on view March 8th through June 12th. And then also the Getty Research Institute, a lot of the exhibitions that they put on can be considered modern in nature. So right now, this is the exhibition on view at the Getty Villa. It's called Flesh and Bones, The Art of Anatomy. And it explores the connection between physicians and artists through the ages, because of course, human anatomy and the human body plays a huge role in art and the development of art through the ages. And they have this spectacular piece. So this is definitely one of those things that looks better in real life. So this is actually life size. And it sits in the corner of a dark gallery, and it is so cool because all of those those veins and that circulatory system. It flickers in the light. It is so cool. I highly recommend checking that out. It's in the very last gallery of the Research Institute's exhibition. And then also on view currently at the Getty Center, we have Poussin and the Dance. And I personally have not had a chance to check this out yet, but I've heard that it incorporates some more modern art elements with some classic Western European elements as well. So there's contemporary dance film elements that are incorporated into this exhibition. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
I probably could ask you 10 questions.
Well, we have some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
First one, how do you determine what pieces of art to acquire?
Mhm.
And what research do you do to make sure it has the proper provenance? And with the price of art that has gone totally stratospheric over the last so many years, how do you determine which piece to go after?
Yeah, so it's a very multifaceted, there's a lot of prongs for the answer to that. So it's from my understanding, and I don't work in those departments, but from what I gather, it's a collaborative process between our board of trustees, our curators. So if it's going to be a painting that we're going to acquire, if it's going to be a photograph collection, it would be the photography curators. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. And we have a whole department of registrars and talk about provenance and like, where has this piece been? Is it the original thing? Like if it's a piece that's been missing for hundreds of years and it's just come to light, which actually happened with the Bernini bust. Let's see. Let's see.
What's her position?
So this piece here was thought to have been missing, but came to light and we acquired this piece. And so sometimes it's through private sales. So to be honest with you, I don't know how those inquiries occur. I don't know if the person with the item that they possess reaches out to the Getty or reaches out to multiple institutions and tries to get the highest offer. So sometimes it's through a private sale that we acquire pieces. Other times it's through a public auction, so through Sotheby's or through Christie's. And an example of that would be this piece here, Mayonnaise Spring. So we acquired her a few years ago. So we got her, I think, and this was published in the LA Times, so I can say this. We acquired her, I think, for $64 or $65 million. So I think it's as far as like a budget and how much we're willing to bid on certain pieces, it's definitely a conversation that unfolds between our curators, senior leadership, and our board of trustees as to how big the budget is. Like I said, I'm not in those departments, so I don't really know how the sausage gets made, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you ever deaccession art or sell art?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Do you ever deaccession or sell any of your art?
Not that I'm aware of. If that happens, I am not aware of it. They don't announce it and make it well known, but no, I don't think we sell any of our art. Obviously, if there's a temporary exhibition, and we do loan out some of our pieces for temporary exhibitions, but I don't think we would be loaning out Van Gogh's irises or anything like that anytime soon. Depends on the piece.
Ed Gold here. I had a question. Getty, I guess, lived the last 25 years of his life in England.
Mm-hmm.
He apparently didn't come to the United States, which is a puzzle. But my understanding is that he lived in almost like a large castle or something like that. in England. And I would imagine that in his castle, he had purchased an awful lot of artifacts and that sort of thing. When he died, what happened to all of the antiques and collections that he had in London? And did he also set up any kind of a museum in London, or was everything transferred to the United States, or was it sold?
Yeah, so he did live in England in the last 25 years of his life. He was in really poor health the last 10 years of his life, so it made traveling to see the progress of the museum next to impossible. And there was a lot of art at the Pacific Palisades site, but he did collect a substantial amount of the French decorative arts, and they were at Sutton Place, which is where he lived when he was in England. And all of it was shipped to the States and then went on view at the Getty Villa site. So he had collected a substantial amount, and the collection was on display in England and shipped on over across the sea. A fun fact that I just remembered I didn't include in my presentation is that Mr. Getty is actually buried at the Getty Villa.
Oh,
Him and
my heavens. Wow.
two of his sons are buried there as well. It is not accessible to the public. Only the Getty family can go up there, and they're escorted by our security officers. So yeah, after he passed, he made the trek across the ocean to be buried at his museum.
Good. Good. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, Marcia, I think you're on mute. Sorry. Yes, Kurt.
I want you to confirm something for me. I read years ago that Getty got tired of people using the house phone to make long distance calls. So he installed a payphone in the house. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge and what I know, that is correct.
Okay, now I have another question. With the
Sure.
transition from film and chemical processing and photography, is the photographic department making a similar transition to acquiring collections that are digital, not necessarily prints?
Yeah, it's a whole complicated process, right? Because we have a lot of archives and archival photography collections that are donated to us because folks know that if they donate their collections to the Getty, they're in good hands, and we have conservators and people, scientists that literally specialize in paper conservation. We have a lot of folks on site at the Getty that specialize in that. For example, we have a special room for David Hockney's Pear Blossom Highway. I'm sure you've seen that and heard about that. But due to the nature of the sensitivity of all of the Polaroids that Hockney used to create Pear Blossom Highway, it needs to be stored in a particular way. So we do have special storage spaces for special collections to make sure that they are preserved for generations to come. As far as the collecting medium, so whether it's physical prints or digitized copies, I don't know if if our curator teams and our departments care about one over the other, but they are doing their best to digitize everything to make sure not only that it's preserved for hundreds of years for future generations to see and to learn from, but also to ensure that it's cataloged and saved and all of that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I was curious if newly acquired collections are becoming more and more digital collections, not actual print collections.
I would imagine it's a mix of both. I'm not quite sure. I do have a good friend who works in the Department of Photographs, and I'm sure she could better answer your question. But to the best of my knowledge, it's a little bit of both. So physical, tangible collections, as well as digital collections.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next, speak up.
I've got another question.
Yes.
How do you have a staff of 1,200 and no visible means of income coming in except for the investments? Am I overly concerned that the $6 to $9 billion could run out at some time in the future?
We are fully functional off of the endowment. I believe his name is Jim Williams, is our chief investment officer, and I believe he's been with the Getty. He's been with the Getty a very long time, and he saw us through the 2008 crisis. I do know that there were a lot of changes made to the Getty through that during that time in terms of spending and priorities and all of that. But yeah, that's how we function, is off of the endowment. We're actually very fortunate. For example, through the pandemic, we all kept our jobs, our full pay, full benefits. No one was furloughed, no one was laid off, no benefits were cut. Unlike I have a lot of colleagues or friends that work at other cultural institutions and museums, and they were not so fortunate. And the reason for that is, of course, other museums are dependent upon admission and charging to see temporary exhibitions and things like that. So the Getty Foundation, which I spoke about during my presentation, they actually gave grants out to local Los Angeles art galleries and museums to ensure their survival through the pandemic. So we're in a very fortunate situation with the endowment to have a cushion like we do, so to speak.
John.
Yeah. I can answer a little bit about this also, because I know a little bit about this sector.
Thank you.
The endowment is, you said, somewhere between 6 and 9 billion. I know that foundations are required by law to spend at least 5% of the value of the endowment at perhaps the year before, or maybe it's 2 years average before. So with 6 to 9 billion in endowment, the Getty has to spend every year roughly 300 to 450 million a year. They have to spend that by law. So that would seem to require, that would seem to state that they have a pretty good cushion there, 300 to 450 million dollars to spend. The other thing they do, and I was interested in, I was going to ask about this also. The Getty does fundraising also, because I've been sent mailers about donating to the Getty Museum, which we've done actually in the past. So it sounds to me like they're in pretty good shape financially.
Yeah, as you said in my introduction, I've been at the Getty for about 8.5 years. And during my short time at the Getty, because there's a lot of folks that have been there much longer than me, we actually created a development department who is basically the fundraising arm of the Getty, John. So I'm wondering if they're the ones that have reached out to you regarding fundraising. Sure. So it wasn't something that we had in place before, but came into place and was established as a department within the last 5 to 6 years, I want to say.
And Kurt, you have another question?
Yeah, I had a comment. The Huntington ran into a similar situation. Chris was wondering if they would ever, if the Getty would run out of money. The Huntington was actually getting close to running out of money. I don't know how close, but they were worried about it. And the reason was that Henry Huntington had specified in his will that the assets be invested extremely conservatively. So they weren't keeping up with what investments should have been making. And they solved the problem by initiating a very aggressive fundraising campaign. And now they're doing fine.
Okay. And Mikiko, you have a question.
Cori, I think you might have answered some of my questions, but I'd like to know why you decided to want to work for Getty, and what are some of the major reasons why you enjoy working there?
Oh, I like this question. This is fun. as John mentioned in my intro, I got my bachelor's in music industry studies. I'm very passionate about the arts in general. I sang in choirs and played violin for years. I sang in the Vatican in a children's choir during Mass and sang in festivals and all that. And I worked in the music industry. I interned at a record label when I was in college, and interned at a management company. And I ended up working at William Morris Endeavor in Beverly Hills talent agency. I worked there for about a year and quickly discovered it was not for me. Takes a certain kind of person for that, and I am not that kind of person. So I worked there a year, and I ended up working at the Getty, like an entry-level job. So I started out as a visitor services associate and worked my way up to where I am now. And I applied to work at the Getty because I loved it. I loved to come there as a regular visitor. I knew that in applying, I didn't have a art history degree or anything like that. But yeah, and I love to work at the Getty because it's such a multifaceted organization, and it's just a beautiful place to work. So it's a lot of fun to constantly be around the visual arts, and on my lunch break, go for a walk in the Central Garden or go see a new temporary exhibition.
Cori, let me ask you a quick question.
Mhm.
What is, could you just speak briefly about docents, and if people want to go there and work and help and so forth, and of course I don't think they get paid, but they contribute.
Sure. So there's two types of programs that are volunteer work, unpaid work. So there is the volunteer program, which is separate from the docent program. The volunteer program is under the umbrella of Security and Visitor Services. So it's the same department as me. So volunteers at the Getty, they serve to give directional assistance. So when folks get off the tram, to make sure they know where they're going, if they have questions about where's the elevator, where's the restroom, what exhibition should I see? I'm from Japan. I've never been here before. I have 1 hour. What should I see? That's primarily what volunteers do. Docents give tours. So there's different types of tours. There's educational docents, and they give tours to K through 12 groups. So they work with the kiddos Monday through Friday, and they give educational lessons, a lot of retired teachers and college professors and things like that. And then we also have gallery docents that give tours to the general public. So collection highlights tours, exhibition tours, things like that. And then we have site docents. So they give tours about the gardens and the architecture. So we have those at both sites as well. So it's two different programs. So the docent program is under the umbrella of the museum, and then education.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question. I've heard
Sure.
rumors, I don't know if it's true, but that the Getty wants to, well, part of the plan is that everyone at every generation to build a new building with that, whatever the architecture is at that time. And they bought enough land, a lot more land than what's being used now, from what I understand.
Yep.
And is that true?
I have never heard that.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that. But yeah, the piece of property we have in the Santa Monica Mountains is quite large. But I don't know if there's plans to extend or build other buildings or anything like that. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's tricky with where both of our museums are located. So in the neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, and then with the Getty being in Brentwood, Bel Air, for us to build anything requires a lot of permits, a lot of dealing with the neighbors. So we have to really tiptoe and approach things delicately when we are thinking about anything like that. But I have not heard of anything like that, but that's pretty cool. I like that.
One more question too. I understand it was built figuring, which has already happened a few times, that they figured fires were going to go past the Getty,
Yep.
and that the artwork was completely protected from fire, and that there's some sort of windows or steel things that go down to lock the entrances so fire couldn't get in the actual buildings, and all of that is true.
Yeah, so we have a very, so each site was built bearing in mind that we're in fire country, so to speak, and fires can spring up at any time. In each site, especially the center and the villa too, there's a lot of drought resistant plants and vegetation planted around. So hopefully that would help prevent the fire from spreading closer and closer to the Getty. Also, what each site is made out of, you know, at the center, it's made out of travertine, right? It's very not flammable. So, and there's specialized sprinkler systems. In the past, we've hired goats to come and munch on the vegetation all around the sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't done that in a while, I don't believe, but we have an awesome gardening team and horticulture team at both sites that ensure that we're safe. And I always say, if there's ever a natural disaster, the Getty is where I want to be, because we are set up. If there's ever anything to go wrong, run up to the Getty Center. It is the place to be.
And are there any more questions? We maybe have time for one more. And John, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment again a little further about the cash flow for the Getty, which I indicated earlier. They're required to spend 5% of the value of the endowment every year, which generates a huge amount of money. To the extent that the portfolio earns more than 5%, it will grow larger. And of course, over the last decade or so, as we know in the U.S. markets, they've earned on average quite a bit more than 5%, and that's enabled the Getty endowment to grow. I don't have any figures in front of me, but I think it's grown immeasurably over the last decade or so, even in the face of spending $300 to $400 or $500 million a year.
Richard, did I miss you? Did you have a question? Real quick one. You're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute, Richard. Did you have a quick question?
I had heard it had one of the largest water supplies in storage.
We do. We have a lot of water stored at the center. It's the place to be, I'm telling you. If you can make your way up there, something goes crazy, earthquake, tsunami, zombie apocalypse, it's the place to be.
Yeah, well, thank you, Cori, so much. This has been I had a feeling there were going to be a lot of questions, so I wanted to leave some time. And, but thank you so much for coming today. And in a way of saying thank you, in your name, we've made a donation to the Westwood Public Library there in Westwood Village. And
awesome.
Not too far from the Getty, you know, but
yeah.
In your name for your speech today. And
thank you.
Comments, we have about 1 minute left here. Well, thank you so much. And again, next week the meeting is at the Luskin Center, and then we'll be back on Zoom for May 12th. And then May 19th will be at the YMCA, at the Collins Cats YMCA on May 19th. So hopefully everybody will see a lot of people at the Luskin Center next week. And I'll dong the only bell I have here. So ding, 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 ding. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Great meeting.